Good morning, Miss Betty.
Morning, Miss Keisha and Tanisha and all the shahs out there in the world of real estate. Good morning to everybody. My name is Betty Williams. I'm the president of the Greater Sacramento NAACP. And today I welcome you to the Black Wealth Forum that's being hosted by our housing chair, Tanisha Broadway, who is also the president of, and I always mess this up, Tanisha, you're president of the Black Realtist. Is that how you pronounce it?
Close, Sacramento Realtist.
Sacramento Realtist,
Yeah.
which comprise of predominantly African Americans?
Yes.
Okay. So the fact that we have her as the housing chair and Miss Keisha Agent, who's also a member of the Greater Sacramento NAACP, and others will be part of the panel. I love this segment, and I want us in 2021 to do more of it. We definitely have a wealth gap when it comes to African Americans. And as I welcome you into this session, when I looked at the information for Sacramento County, I do know that in the county, we have over 10% of African Americans. Actually, it's 10.17% to be exact. And then of mixed race with at least one of the parents being African Americans, it's 10.41%. So collectively, if you put those together, we have some pretty large numbers when it comes to African Americans in the county of Sacramento. But when you look at the average African Americans or anyone when it comes to savings, I found out when it comes to white individuals, they have a savings average of $171,000. Blacks, African Americans have 17,000. Latinx, 20,000, and others who are non-white, 64,000. And so again, we're at the bottom. And when you're looking at our children who are unborn, about to be born into this world, especially in our community or our area, I thought it was interesting. If you're a white individual and an unborn child is about to be birthed into this world, they come into the world with an average of $355,000, whereas a Latinx is $46,000, and an African American unborn child come into the world with $4,000. And if you look at the Asian community, they start with over $450,000 for their children being born into the world. And a lot of this has to do with owning your own home or your properties or becoming business owners. And so if we were to look at three key pieces when it comes to closing that gap, it would be access to home ownership would be number one. Number two would be education, because the more education you have, it shows that more than likely you would get the better job. And as well as the education, home ownership, and business ownership. So the lack of African Americans having their own businesses is an issue. So I want this to be the first of many series going into 2021 as we prepare our African Americans in this community to start bridging that gap. And probably if I were to add a fourth one would be investments. We as African Americans, I think we are afraid of things that we don't know. So if we don't understand stocks and investments, then we don't apply ourselves. And therefore, again, we're at the bottom. And I know that was a long welcome, but it was important to me that we knew some of those numbers. And at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Tanisha Broadway, who will be carrying this forum from this point on. Thank you, Tanisha.
Thank you so much, Betty. Amazing points. I love that you hit on all that's really necessary and all that we're actually going to be talking about today. So for all of you viewers, thank you for joining us for this very important town hall. And like Betty said, we're going to continue this dialogue because this is more than just a one-time, you know, touch on it and then keep it moving, because there is a wealth gap and we have to figure out strategies to close it. And definitely home ownership is a big part of it. Betty introduced me. Again, my name is Tanisha Broadway. I am also a loan officer. I'm with Fairway Independent Mortgage. We also sponsor the NAACP, but I've been doing home loans for over 17 years. And I truly, truly enjoy what I do. Black home ownership is especially important to me. Building generational wealth through home ownership is something that I preach and I teach all the time. It's the #1 way to do it. And I'm very excited to chat with you guys today and dive into this dialogue. A couple of really important guests that we have, Ms. Keisha Matthews. Keisha, if you're there, I'd love you to introduce yourself formally.
Hey, Tanisha. Hi, everybody, and thank you for tuning in this Saturday morning. My name is Keisha Matthews. I go by Key or Agent Key. I'm the broker and owner of Matthews and Company Realty Group, and I'm also a member of the NAACP as well as the Sacramento Realtist Association. And the motto for the Sacramento Realtist Association is democracy in housing. And Tanisha said for me to just introduce myself, so I'm going to make sure I keep it short, but just to say that I'm excited about today's town hall because it is actually now my life's mission to make sure that there is democracy in housing and being unapologetically representative of African Americans here in Sacramento to ensure not only home ownership, but that we're also teaching financial literacy, which, as Betty mentioned before, is the bedrock to getting to that, to bridging that wealth gap.
Thank you, Keisha. And then we also have Mr. Michael Blair. Are you available?
Hey, good morning, everybody.
How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. And I would love for you to formally introduce yourself to our guests.
Hey, so definitely thanks for having me on. This is such an important thing. So I commend NAACP for putting this on and looking forward to, as Betty said, the first of many, especially into next year, because we need it for the culture. I'm Michael Blair, and I'm with Neighborhood Innovation, and we are what's called a neighborhood economic development company. So we really work to uplift underserved neighborhoods in multiple ways, working with the schools and nonprofits, neighborhood associations, anyone who wants to get involved to kind of advance the neighborhood and connect resources to people to make change. So looking forward to contribute today. Going to talk a little bit about stocks. As Betty was mentioning, we need to get into investment. And so we help folks do that from the ground up.
Amazing. You guys, this is going to be so impactful. I mean, these are going to be some nuggets, some real tangible information that our guests, our community can take and immediately take an action right now. So with that being said, I want to jump into a little bit of history. It's always important, and I always say this, in order to figure out where we're going, we got to know where we were, where we came from. And what I want to touch on real quick is, okay, so we've all heard about the 40 acres and a mule, right? I mean, maybe millennials may not know about that, but that was a promise that was made to us. It was a real promise. And if you think about it, that would have astronomically changed how wealth has been accumulated for African Americans. If you don't know what it is or how it came about, so back in the day, Union General William T. Sherman, he had a plan to give newly freed families 40 acres and a mule. It was among the first and most significant promises and broken ones to us as African Americans. So as the Union Army gradually took over Confederate territory, there was a question as to what freedom would really mean for emancipated slaves. Without property or money or the proper education, most really just didn't have a immediate clear path to economic independence. So 4 days later, on January 16, 1865, Sherman, he issued a special field order number 15, which commanded that 400,000 acres of property confiscated from Confederate landowners be redistributed to Black families in 40-acre plots. So by June, the land had been allocated to 40,000 of a total of 4 million freed slaves. Mules weren't included in this order, but the Union Army did give some away as part of the effort. But the order was short-lived. President Andrew Johnson, who had slaves himself and publicly shared his beliefs on white supremacy, overturned the order before the end of the year and returned the land to the slave owners and traders who had originally owned it. The long-term financial implications of this reversal is staggering. Some estimate that the value of 40 acres and a mule today for those 40,000 free slaves would be worth $640 billion today. So you see, that kind of set the trajectory of this wealth gap. I mean, obviously. And so if we look at that, we can understand some of these issues that have been generational over generational over generational. Keisha, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so, and for everyone who's listening in, just adding a little more background to that, why did we deserve those 40 acres? You've probably heard people say, we built this country. That is literally the truth.
Yes.
African American slaves built America. The slave trade, the cotton trade, what am I missing?
Industrial, I mean, what didn't we build?
There are three main industries that thrived, that put America in the forefront financially, off the backs of slaves. And so we literally built this country. And it's important to have this history to understand the timeline of how we get to where we are today. We often look at our communities now, we take for granted what we see because we're so accustomed to seeing it that way. And oftentimes you don't even know that you're in a rut until you have something to compare it to. And so that's why it's so important to look at the bigger picture. You've heard that expression, you can't see the forest for the trees. If you're only looking at what's going on immediately right in front of you, if you're only looking at what's going on in your neighborhood and you have no perspective on everything around you, how do you know that there's anything else out there except for what you've experienced? And so that's what this platform or town hall is about today, is to give you a perspective. If you've ever wanted to know, if you're people who say, why can't you just pick yourself up by your bootstraps? People who say, I have a Black friend and they're wealthy and they're not this and they're not that. How come you can't be like them? Well, we are hoping that when you finish today's town hall, that you'll have a better grasp and understanding of that information, and then that you'll be equipped to do something about it, to share with other people, and to work towards making a change in it. So just to piggyback off of what Tanisha said, there were several key areas throughout history where this wealth transfer should have occurred, didn't occur, and as a result became huge setbacks for us as a people. So the 40 acres was one. The second biggest one was the GI Bill. After World War II, so we're talking about the early 1900s now, the GI Bill of Rights was drafted with the intent to provide returning servicemen money for higher education, financing for startup businesses, low-cost home loans, unemployment insurance, employment and trade schools for men who wanted to learn new skills. The language didn't specifically exclude African Americans, but it was structured in such a way that it ultimately shut the doors for the 1.2 million Black servicemen, veterans, who bravely served this country during World War II in segregated ranks, right, by the way, in segregated ranks. So here's what ended up happening. The Southern Democrats, they feared that returning Black veterans would use public sympathy for veterans to advocate against Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were legal laws that kept us segregated, that shut us out, that allowed people to outwardly and socially accept racism.
Yep.
And so to make sure that the GI Bill largely benefited white people, they drew on tactics to ensure that the deal helped as few Black people as possible. And they insisted that the program be administered by state levels versus the federal government. There were Black vets that had trouble securing the benefits because they couldn't access the benefits. They weren't given honorable discharges. A large number of Black veterans were discharged dishonorably more often than their white counterparts. That was intentional. So these are subtle things that are built into the system that, if practiced, will cause indirect discrimination. So it looks legal. Oh, well, you can't get this loan because you were dishonorably discharged.
Right.
But the person that had the power to discharge me didn't have the right to dishonorably discharge me. They were usually false allegations. Can you imagine being someone serving your country, that many people being dishonorably discharged? It wasn't a coincidence.
Right.
Black veterans couldn't find the facilities that delivered on the bill's promise. They made the facilities, put them in places where they didn't have access to them. They were unable to participate in activities related to the vocational training, so they couldn't grow, they couldn't change their skill sets. Adequate equipment was only available to white students. Simple intimidation tactics kept Blacks from enjoying GI benefits. For example, a crowd hurled rocks at Black veterans as they moved into a Chicago housing development. Thousands of Black vets were attacked in the years following World War II. Some were singled out and some were lynched. These are stories that we hear, and this is why they were happening. They were trying to prevent Blacks from gaining an economic footing. Southern postmasters were being accused of refusing to deliver the forms that Blacks needed to fill out to receive their unemployment benefits. They were intentionally, Blacks, we were intentionally being shut down at all sides. And I don't share it with you like this for you to get angry.
Right.
I share it with you like this for you to know that this really happened.
Yep.
Right here in the United States. And as the years went on, white veterans, they flowed, the white suburbs grew.
Yep.
The building and the construction of the homes of the suburbs, they flourished.
Yep.
And they began amassing wealth and skilled positions. And
Yep.
the Black veterans were not allowed these options. The majority of skilled jobs were given to white workers. The post-war housing boom almost entirely excluded Black Americans. And here is where redlining comes in. And you've heard of redlining. Most Blacks who remained in the cities received less and less investment from businesses and banks. I'm sorry. So wherever Blacks live, businesses were, you could literally see an outline. They had not to pour money into. So think about where our low-end neighborhoods are right now. Those areas that we see, New Helvetia, Oak Park, where Del Paso Heights, those areas were created post-war.
Yes.
These areas were created because white-run financial institutions refused mortgages and loans to Black people. This is where the redlining comes from. It's a practice of marking maps by race to characterize the risk of lending money and providing insurance. Lenders froze out poor neighborhoods, ensuring that loan assistance and insurance would be denied, while new white suburbs came out with racist covenants. And some of you have seen these. If you've ever purchased a home before, you get what's called a preliminary report, and it contains what's called CC&Rs, codes, covenants, and restrictions. El Dorado Hills is infamous for it. They were on the news for it because someone actually called it out, and they've been working over the years trying to get it taken away, trying to get it taken out of the codes.
And that's still today, right now.
Yeah, you can still find that language in the CC&Rs in many neighborhoods. And the reason that it's still there, there's two reasons it's there. It's still there. One, when you're writing laws and they're being written down in booklets, the only way to get it out is to strike it out where there's a line through it, but you have to see what was there before. So we actually do want to see what was there before, because again, it's part of history. We remember where we want to know where we came from. But there are some that are there that are not stricken. And they just say, okay, well, we've got the Fair Housing Act, so we know that can't be true. So, we just don't bother with it. It's a huge hassle to get it stricken or to get it taken out, to get it removed. I'm hoping that one day that we do set up some type of a law or a policy, or implement something where we do work on striking all of that language out so that it does not show up in the CC&Rs looking as if it still exists. So the original GI Bill ended in June of 1956, and by that time, nearly 8 million World War II vets had received education or training, and 4.3 million home loans worth $33 billion had been handed out. Think about that number, $33 billion in 1956. But most Black veterans had been left behind. Wealth gap. Second phase of the wealth gap. This is where wealth is grown, right? Yep. Think about right now with COVID and the quarantine. And I know many of you that are listening right now have heard how much money is being amassed in stocks since April. If you have not been on that gravy train, you have been missing out on the wealth boom.
But they're on this call and we're going to talk about it. Michael's on the call.
Yeah, but I want to help you make that comparison, because that's what was happening. There was a wealth boom.
Yep.
And Blacks were shut out intentionally from that gravy train. We're talking about $33 billion back then. Imagine what that equates to today. Think about the time span, 2 decades, an entire generation, and a mindset trenched in racism and cultural bias.
That mindset is a big deal.
And it wasn't changed until, and the mindset, you don't change a mindset just because you create a law. No. So let's fast forward 20 years later. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, more commonly known as the Fair Housing Act, was the third major civil rights law passed in the 60s. The Fair Housing Act made it illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of housing based on color, race, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, disability. But think about this. Does the introduction of a law that makes an act illegal instantly change the patterns, mindset, and habits of a people?
Yes.
Does it instantly change people's mindset? No.
Mm-mm.
How long should it take for people to change? And are we still seeing the effects of the systemic racism today?
We absolutely are still seeing the effects. I mean, the number of Black home ownership has decreased after the financial crisis that happened in 2008. We just haven't been able to recover since then. There was a time that we were flourishing, right? There was a time back in the history where we did own a nice, what they call it, Black Wall Street, right? During that time, there, we had things, and then we lost it, and then we just haven't been able to catch up. And a lot of it has to do with the mindset. A lot of it has to do with the fear. We talk about fear a lot of the time. We brought up fear in the beginning of this, the fear to not want to jump into stocks and bonds because you don't really know. Betty talked about the education, right? If you don't know, then you're reluctant to even move forward on it, right? If you were hurt and you suffered from a foreclosure or credit issues because of the housing crisis back in 2008, maybe you're too reluctant to move forward to buy again. And you don't want to get caught up in that. So it's easier for you to rent. It's easier for you to feel that security of just paying your rent, but there's no security in paying somebody else's mortgage or paying in a apartment. There's no security in that. It's a mentality.
You brought up a good point when you said by 2008. So between 1968 and 2008, we are a very resilient people,
Yep.
Black people. We're very forgiving people.
Yes. Yes.
We have grace and mercy on everybody except for ourselves.
Come on now.
When we got to 2008, prior to 2004, when the market took off, Bill Clinton had introduced a law where he was trying to make housing more equitable, make it more accessible for minorities. At that point, before he did that, in Sacramento County, one in every 2 African Americans owned their home.
Yes.
Talk about resilient. Think about that. Now you've got all of this stuff happening. They shut us off, didn't give us our 40 acres.
Yep.
Shut us out of the GI Bill, but they did exactly what you said. We went in our own communities and we pushed each other.
Yes.
The church was very central around that, organizing, and we were buying from each other. Education was very important. The Black dollar was circulating in our communities because of this. We were segregated. So segregation kind of had its benefits, because we had to figure it out.
Yeah.
So in Sacramento, 1 in 2 African Americans own. That means you could look at every other person and that was a homeowner.
Yes.
After the fallout in Sacramento County, let me remember what the percentage was. I want to say it was something like 30-something% of Blacks owned their home after that, in the low 30s. And that number didn't start to recover until actually maybe just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So we have been spending all of this time still. Once the fallout occurred, it impacted African Americans even more, because a lot of those loans were subprime loans targeted once again through redlining to Black communities. And it hurt us even more. And so we're going to talk today about the difference between the fallout now, because people are saying the difference between the fallout back then to market conditions now.
Right.
Everybody is asking that question. Is the market going to crash? Is now a good time to buy? So let's discuss some of the differences between back then and today.
I'll jump in with the loan part, right? The financing portion of
Why don't you start off with that? What were the loans like?
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit, you guys. So for those of you who were able to purchase then, or did purchase then, you may remember that there was a lot of loans available where you didn't need much of anything to get approved. They weren't really checking credit. You really didn't even have to have a job in a lot of cases. Pretty much as long as you had a social security number, you could pretty much buy a home. And these liar loans is what we would call them, where we're allowing people to buy a home with pretty much no money out of their pocket, with these crazy negative interest rates, right? And
adjustable mortgages.
Yep, adjustable mortgages. People were able to buy homes that were making minimum wage, but could buy $1 million home on paper for whatever reason. And there was an overwhelming amount of these loans happening, and people were getting into them left and right. And what do you think happened? Obviously the crash happened, but when those loans adjusted, right? When that initial teaser period ended, which was in between anywhere from 3 to 5 years, then it was time to pay your full note. So your payment went from $1,500 to $4,000 overnight. Only thing you could do was walk away at that point. And so there was a tremendous amount of that happening. And that's the reason why all this craziness went down. So that's what was happening with the loans then. Now, obviously you have to be able, so there's rules, there's laws, things have happened since then that ensure that if you're going to be able to get financing today, you really have to qualify. Like you really have to have a job and I'm checking, and you really have to have credit, right? Your profile has to be strong and stable in order for you to qualify today. That's the big difference. There's rules in place. There's not predatory lending like that anymore. I mean, there's a lot of rules, regulations that are for the consumer that weren't the case. So there's more protections for you going into this process as a first-time home buyer. Again, you're a first-time home buyer if you haven't owned in 3 years. So if you purchased back then, had some challenges, and now you're thinking about it, it's a great time. The rules have changed, the loans are different. So that's all I want to touch on that.
And regarding the housing at that time, there was a surplus of properties back in between 2004, 2003, 2008, and probably through 2012, a surplus of properties. Many of you might remember Natomas and Elk Grove sprouting up at the same time. Just you would see a field 1 month and come back and you'd see 100 homes, 2-3 months later. And those houses were being built so quickly. People were selling their homes that they had been living in. So you have resale homes and you have new home construction. You had those two roads where inventory was coming from. And so it put a lot of inventory on the market. Yeah. And you might remember that a lot of buyers were coming not only from the Bay Area, but from other countries. Yeah. And here, so I'm describing right now two big differences. Back then, we can call it 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, lots of inventory.
Yes.
Fast forward to today, inventory is down. Inventory has been low in Sacramento for the past 3 to 5 years. Last year, this time, September, we had 3,000 homes on the market in Sacramento. That's low. September this year, 1,500. So we've got a really tight supply of inventory. And we know that where there is no supply, where there is much demand and no supply, what is that going to do? Increase prices, right? So that was one difference. The second difference that I described was the buyers. They were coming from the Bay Area back then and from other countries, but they were coming as investors.
Right.
So they weren't coming here to live. What was happening is they're buying up lots of property because they're coming with 6-7 digit bank accounts, buying up our, at the time, $100,000, $200,000 homes,
right,
that are today selling for $400,000.
Exactly.
You guys.
Yeah.
So these were nice homes that they were buying. They were buying in our now nice communities, turning them into rentals, and they were taken off. A lot of people were made poster children when it came time to start prosecuting behind this stuff, because they purchased hundreds and hundreds of properties right here in Sacramento and became slumlords. And people began to sue them. You all probably remember some of those stories. So ultimately, the banks take over these properties. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So the comparison to today, they're coming from the Bay, but guess what now? They're not coming to buy and invest.
No.
They're coming to buy and stay.
Yes.
Bay Area, because it's too expensive. They are bringing not their bank accounts, they're bringing their incomes.
Yes, they are.
Their 6 and 7 digit incomes. And they're saying, hey, Sacramento is looking really good right now.
Looking real good right now.
Right? So they've been thinking this way the past couple of years, but get this, look what COVID did. Google, who else? Facebook, Microsoft, all of these big tech companies, which happen to be Oracle, all of those out of the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, telling their employees, you get to work from home indefinitely. So if I was living in Silicon Valley, or if I had a job at Google or something, and I had to try to find a home, and a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,600 is $1.5 million or $2 million.
Yep.
And then I can go down the road 2 hours away and find me a $500,000 home that looks better. That's probably 4 with 3-car garage, beautiful, right.
Yes.
And I can work from home. Guess what I'm going to do? It only makes sense.
Yep.
So that's what they're doing. So we already had a limited supply. We already had them coming over here anyway. And COVID has put a further squeeze on what's been happening economically here locally in our housing industry. So just looking at those two things and asking the question, that, you know, say, or making the statement that the housing market is going to fall, it just, I don't see it in the cards.
I don't
When you
see it
see
either.
those types of stories, and this is what I tell people also, be careful when you read the news. Oftentimes the news is coming at us, depending on where you're watching it from a national level or from a state level. Most of the
Yep.
time, if you're watching a major network, it's national. So when they say, be careful, the market's about to fall, they are talking about metropolitan areas like New York,
Yes.
where when COVID hit, people died in huge numbers and got sick in huge numbers because New York, those metropolitan areas, they're very condensed. They have many
Yes.
more people living more closely together than we do here in Sacramento
Yes.
Valley.
Yes. Yes.
So in order to protect themselves, a lot of those people fled. That you go to New York, you go to the boroughs in these different areas, and even in the commerce areas, ghost town, their commercial properties abandoned, a lot of the homes abandoned. Are
Yeah.
they going to see a real estate fallout? Absolutely, because now you got to convince people that it's safe to move back. So they're going to have a issue. But is that happening right now in Sacramento? Ask yourself. And the answer is no. We have people that every time we make offers on behalf of buyers, we have agents come back and tell us, oh yeah, we had 15, 20 offers. And it's very frustrating, all of the competition. So those same dynamics don't exist here locally that exist nationwide. So be very careful when you hear a soundbite.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're comparing it or you're understanding what demographic, what area, what region that story is coming
You
from.
know, Keisha, I get that question and probably in every consultation, I'm always asked, is it a good time to buy? Or you know what, I'm gonna wait till after the crash, or I'm gonna wait for, people have this perception of things because I mean, things happen in cycles. And yes, will things adjust? Yes, things will definitely adjust some, but are we gonna experience anything that we experienced in 2008? No, we can't. The climate's very different, just like Keisha mentioned, as far as there's not enough inventory. It's a supply and demand issue. Like I mentioned, you can't get these liar loans. You really have to qualify. So it's real buyers out there with real profiles being able to buy. So we're not going to experience that. So the number one question, and we'll touch on it in a little bit. I know people are anxious to hear about the investing. So we'll kind of speed it up. And this was really good, first of all, and we're going to dive into so much more meat in our next ones, but we just wanted to really give you a picture today of where we were, where we're going, and open this dialogue and really just be here as a resource for you guys out there, right? But
how much more time do we have before?
Maybe 10 minutes-ish, somewhere around there. So is it a good time to buy? That is the question on everyone's mind. Is it a great time to buy? Are interest rates going to stay low? I'll first off say, yes, interest rates are going to stay low for a while now. So money's cheap. It's cheap. Interest rates last year, this time, were, in the high fours. I do a lot of down payment assistance. I won't dive too much into all the details of that, but someone that was going to utilize those programs last year may had a rate in the high fours, low fives. This time now, same program, the rates in the threes and the twos.
So can we just say that a rate of 4 or 5% is still?
So let me thank you. So first of all, millennials out there, don't get it twisted now. Rates in 4s and 5s is still good. Back in the 80s, rates was in the 12s. Okay, 20. How high was rates? High.
Yeah.
So even in 4s and 5s, money's still cheap. I'm just saying, like, we are in a time where it's so cheap, money's so cheap. So if you're working, if you have a job and you don't know if you can buy, we need to have this conversation. If you're working and you're renting, you may be in position to buy a home. Yes, things are expensive, and we can spend an hour on this right here. That starter home may not be that dream home, right, Keisha?
Right. Yeah. Oh, and that's really important. As you say that, have the conversation. You don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So one of the stigmas that we have to get out of as a culture is having the conversation about places where we're stuck in our
Yes.
lives. That goes to mental health, from mental health to our finances. We have to have those conversations, and reaching out to feeling comfortable enough to reach out to someone who you're comfortable with,
Yep.
who specializes. You got to stop going to how do we say?
Right.
We got to do it the right way. If
Right.
you really want to have the right come up, you got to do it the right way. And then when we do it that way, when you build a solid foundation for yourself where your finances are straight, where you're working on your credit score for real and not through some kind of company where you've paid them 5, 10, whatever to improve your score. No, work on it the right way. When you do those things the right way, you won't need the federal government to give you a program to help you come up, because then you can take advantage of the real policies that are out there that benefit those people who are wealthy. And that's the position that we want to put ourselves in. If you need to buy a starter home just to get into the housing game, buy that starter home. It doesn't have to be your forever home. And you want to think about that. And it actually can be the beginning of you building your assets, your personal financial wealth, your own, portfolio. So you start off with a $200,000 condo or whatever, wherever it is, you stay in that thing for a few years, allow the equity to build up what other areas you might need to build, if it's credit, or if you're pursuing a different career field, or you're pursuing your own business even. And, once that gets rolling, you get those finances going, and then you take the opportunity to purchase what you really want, the next step up. Maybe that isn't even what you really want, but it's the next step up.
Yes.
Keep the first property as a rental, because you all know Sacramento's rental market is just as hot as the resale market. People can't find any place to rent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a home for rent, do you think you could rent it out? The answer is yes.
Yes.
With the quickness.
Yes. Quick.
If you made a post on your Facebook page, that house would be gone the next day.
Yep.
So now you got somebody else paying that mortgage. You go buy the next better house, wash, rinse, repeat. Now, I do say that with a caveat. Right now, the inventory is very low. It's very tough. Yeah. And I am telling my clients, and we're having these serious conversations, that they're not going to pay more than a house is worth. We're not going there. We're having the conversations where, okay, maybe 5,000-10,000 above market value just to get in the game. But then even the appraisers are being very conservative, and they're coming back and they're slapping appraisals down that say, that house ain't worth that much.
We're not in 2008 anymore.
Yeah. Then you got to come up with the cash difference, because they don't want to be held accountable at the end of the day when the poo-poo hits the fan.
Yes.
And it looks like housing prices are fraudulently inflated. Yes. And so they are policing themselves very well. And I really would like to start the narrative for people to know that it's okay to walk away from a house if you think it's priced too high. Just wait. It's just a house. Right. Just wait. Something else will be along. Don't put yourself. If enough people say no to the shenanigans, the tides will change. I know our time is almost up, so
I know. So I want to kind of leave this nugget with you guys. First of all, as a reminder, I'm a loan officer, right? So the starting point is connecting with me and figuring out, number one, are you in position to start this journey, to buy that first initial property and leverage that property to buy more properties, or to pull cash out of that property in a couple of years to use for a business or to use for stocks, right? You can leverage that property to help you build wealth. That's the whole point of this town hall, you know, is to build that generational wealth. And it starts with owning that first property. You got to get your foot in the door, right? So how do you start? Connect with me. Let's figure out where you are. If you're not quite there, I have tools to help you get into position. It's never going to be a sorry, you're not ready. Okay, call me when you're ready. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to guide you every step of the way to get you in position. Once we figure out where you are, and if you are eligible, then I'm going to pre-approve you. Then at that point, you're ready to start seeing what's out there. What can you buy? Then you can connect with Keisha. We're going to make sure that we have our contact information either emailed to you as an individual, or we can somehow post it. I'll just tell you right now, real quick, you can go to my website directly. I have lots of videos, information. You can even apply if you wanted right now for a consultation, but it's my name, TanishaBroadway.com. So just www.TanishaBroadway.com, and we can start that dialogue immediately. I'm available. I'd love to connect with you guys. You are on there who are first-time home buyers, or those of you who are trying to get back into the market, don't know where to start, or maybe those of you who have credit questions. I'm here to start and get you on your path. In our next town hall we'll talk about more programs, things like that, and we'll dive a little more into it. But just to start this conversation, I'm here for you. Keisha, go ahead.
Oh, I just typed in your web address.
Oh, thank you,
in
honey.
the chat. And I typed in my web address as well. Yeah, Tanisha is one of my lender partners. And one of the things that she does, and I ask all of my lender partners to do, is to just have the conversation, just talk about where you are financially, where you want to be, and then the steps required to get there. Sometimes that might mean waiting. I've had clients wait as long as a couple years, and then they come back and they say, I'm ready. Or I get an email from Tanisha saying, hey, so-and-so is ready. And it's been like 10 months, but they do the work necessary and then they get ready. And you may be ready sooner, but the main thing is that you know where you are, you know where you need to be, and you know what options are available to you for real, firsthand. Not something that you learned because you went into a Facebook chat group about housing. Right. Not something because you went on to Credit Karma and Credit Karma told you. That's not, lenders do not use credit scores from those websites.
We don't.
They use it from the main three. And you've got to have the lender partner that you're working with pull that. They're not going to accept you forwarding them your recent credit score that you pulled off of whatever website. They've got to pull it. So don't do any of that commercial work trying to set yourself and get yourself ready. You need to know firsthand from the lender that you're going to be working with what your options are, what's available to you, and the steps that you need to take.
Thank you so much, Keisha. If you guys have questions, the chat is open. Please feel free to type questions. We'll be on this. We're going to continue to stay on this call. But at this time, I am very excited to introduce Michael Blair again. He's going to be talking about all this money-making stuff that we need. So you buy the house, right? Now you have an asset, right? You pull out $100 grand. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to buy a house? Are you going to invest? What are you going to do with it? Michael, what are they going to do with this money that they have? What can they do? Help us out. Michael,
Sorry,
are you there?
I was on mute.
Okay.
I was on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That was some awesome stuff. This is being recorded because I need to re-listen to that. Y'all threw out so many facts and so much good information.
Thank you.
And to be able to understand this stuff and be able to share it. So it's beautiful. Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Some sharing rights here.
Let's see. Stacy, does he have sharing rights at this time?
Yes, he does.
Okay, great.
All right, let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. I'm not able to connect. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
I think Stacy's working on that.
Okay.
Michael, while she's fixing that, tell me your website so that I can type it in the chat. Someone asked for it.
Thank you. So neighborhoodinnovation.com.
Got it. NEIGHBORHOODINNOVATION TION.com.
Long one.
Yes.
You got it right. I see it now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right. Still unable to share at the moment. I could talk us through
Okay,
some
hold
stuff.
on.
Okay.
All right. You should be able to now.
Hey, all right. Looking good.
Wonderful. Okay, good.
Good.
All right, I'm gonna blow this up for everybody. All right, again, thanks for the intro. Just so much awesome information being shared today, so much game, and it's all free. Nobody paid an admission fee, so I love it. And that's what we have to do. We have to share this stuff. So neighborhood innovation, I mentioned earlier, for those of you who may not have been on early, it was, I just talked about neighborhood economic development solutions. And so what that means is just working with underserved neighborhoods, helping them uplift in a number of different ways. Right now, our focus is on financial literacy. So that's one of our main initiatives we're pushing out right now. And so when you look at money, everybody sees it in a different way, right? And let me show you a few. You have guys like this, right? You got your DJ Khaled. Go out there, get that money, get paid, get that paper, right? Get your jewelry so you can shine. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but for the majority of us, this doesn't work, right? This is not our approach. We could spend the whole time just talking about this one slide because it represents so much. The Black community, or at least segments of it, respect each other on how much money that you actually waste, right? Okay, hear that, because when you look at money, you have to respect it. But when you waste money in certain segments, you actually get more clout. So if I said, hey, I went to the strip club last night and I threw up $30,000 in the air, I would get a lot of respect from some people. But some of us would look at me crazy like, what? Michael Blair? What? In the strip club in the first place, but secondly, throwing up 30,000 in the air, right? It'd be a lot of questions. So you have this mentality, and we have to get the right folks in the right places. Another look is folks that say, okay, I'm a little bit more mature. I respect money, right? You see it as an art. You can actually appreciate it, right? So that's a place that we want to get to. But before we could even get there, the folks that we work with at Neighborhood Innovation mainly are these folks. We're just trying to get them to plant those seeds, right? Just get in the game. So many folks don't take that first step. If you don't take the first step, you're never going to get to the second step, right? You're never going to make it to that goal. So we work on just very practical ways to get folks in the game. We don't try to teach master's classes. Maybe that'll come someday, but we're really just trying to grow folks and get them to grow legacy wealth, to focus on not just them in today, but for their generations to come. So before you can do that, you have to know where you are. And Betty set it up really nice in the beginning with a lot of the statistics. I'm going to kind of echo some of that. In 2016, Pew Research did a study to show how much wealth each household had. So that is the assets minus the liabilities, and then you come out with your household wealth. The average is about $97,000 per household, right? But here's the reality. Once you start looking at this wealth distribution, it looks a lot different. What you see here is the white segment have taken a lot of that money. And why? It's because of reasons that Tanisha and Key shared. All this specific, all the barriers that were put in front of us early on that still translate into today. So we're still trying to work this out, obviously, but we can't stay right here, right? There's no way we can stay right here. In 2053, it's projected that Black household wealth will be at zero. And anytime a whole culture of people go down to zero wealth, some bad things can happen because they still have to stay alive. They still have to take care of their families. But with zero wealth, how will they do that, right? That puts us back into slavery days, right? Because we had zero wealth back then. We can't let this happen. We see where the trajectory is going. So we have to be accountable to each other. And like was said earlier, push each other, right? To get back to where we need to be. We have a Black and brown wealth emergency. And even some of the white middle class are getting squeezed because so much of the money is going to the 1%. So we're seeing a transition right now, but we have a lot of information out there and we need to come together, unite, leverage off one another, and change this whole game. So let's talk stocks. With the stock market, it can be extremely lucrative, right? But it's scary. This is a look at 2012, one share of stock of each one of these companies. And then we looked at the top of 2020 in January, just to do a comparison to see how they look. And as you can see, there was a lot of growth of these companies. So had you just bought one share of Tesla, you would have came out with over $400 profit, right? But at $27 a share, you probably could have afforded quite a bit of it. I jumped on a bunch of it. It wasn't back in 2012, but it was a little bit later. I ended up doing well. So you see the stock market can go up and you can make profit. However, this isn't always the case. We give workshops at Neighborhood Innovation on a monthly basis, and this is some of the stuff we look at, but I always like to give the reality. It's not all just up, right? It can go down. So what's a company that has been around forever that's not doing well today? You might say JCPenney's, right? Remember JCPenney's? It's still going, but barely. There's a couple other ones too, but I want to show you one specifically that will shock a lot of you. Remember Sears? Everybody's bought something at Sears at one point in time, right? You'd imagine that a company's been around that long, they would be top of the game because they had a lot of time to figure things out, to adjust, but it didn't work out for all of us. So some people actually purchased Sears stock and obviously lost money. Now, there's two ways to look at this. You say, hey, what if Sears made a comeback? Think about it. At 19 cents a share, what if you just spent $500, right? And Sears did make a comeback and it came back to its 2012 numbers. You'd be doing pretty good, right? But the question is Sears the company to go into? And there's no automatic answer. You have to look at a few things, a few different factors, pull them all together, come up with your decision. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, there is something called a technical stock analysis. You have the, Wall Street folks, stockbrokers, they look at the technical side. And if you want to learn that, you can. There's plenty of tools out there to help you get to this point. So you can plug in all these numbers. You can look at the price earnings ratio, the yields, the 52-week highs and lows, plug all these numbers in, come up with your calculations, then pull up a chart it all out, find out where everything is, and then come up with your decision, buy, hold, sell, right? So you can do all that, but most of us aren't to that level. Most of us have to start somewhere else. So there's tons of apps out there right now. The list just keeps on growing. This is just a few of them. But this is more of a non-technical look that you can start today. You don't have to be intimidated by all those numbers. Instead, you just focus on what you have in your hand right now and how you take that first step. And this is how you do it. Number of different apps, but all it takes is $5 to get in the game now. Before, remember those numbers we looked at for Tesla, $27 per share, so on and so forth. At one point in time, you had to have enough money to buy a full share before you could even start. And some share prices, they range anywhere from, pennies to hundreds and thousands of dollars. So some companies you couldn't even afford to start purchasing because you were just priced out. Well, today you could buy almost any company you want for as little as $5 and sometimes even less. So for instance, you have Acorns. It's a very popular tool, phone app. With Acorns, it allows you to answer two questions. One is, what is your risk level? Is it moderate, conservative, or somewhere in the middle? So you decide how risky you want to be. And then it asks you how much money you want to put in. And that's it. It figures everything else out for you. So if you say, hey, I want to be conservative, I want to put in $500. That's it. They take it from there. They have actual fund managers that will buy conservative stocks, put your money in that, and you just check on it and watch it grow. Very simple. At one point in time, you couldn't afford to do that with $5. You can put in as little as $5 there, but you can go as high as you want. Robinhood, probably the most popular one on the market right now. You get a lot of flexibility, but you don't get that guidance. So you do have learning tools in there, but no one is managing your fund for you. It is all on you. Now, some folks aren't ready for that yet. They want to start off with a fund manager making decisions for them. Other folks like, nope, I want to control my own money. So that's the difference between the two, but both very user-friendly, very easy to use. Then there's Cash App. Everybody's heard about Cash App. You sent your relatives some money on Cash App more than once, I'm sure. But Cash App, what's interesting is you can invest on Cash App and you only need $1. You don't even need $5. So this lowers the barrier even more. So if anyone says, I can't afford to get into the stock market, first you laugh at them, then you point them to one of these tools on Cash App and say, hey, I'm going to give you $1 so you can get started, right? So you take that barrier away from them. That's no longer going to be an excuse. We can't allow that to happen. Then you have Stash App. And the reason I have this one highlighted is because not that it's the best, not that it's the one you should go with. Instead, it's just the one that I started on and I just know the best. When we do these workshops, I actually do a tutorial on Stash App. I won't do it today because we don't have enough time, but if you attend one of our workshops, and they're free, by the way, then we'll actually walk through the whole Stash App. I'll show you what my approach was, though. I used a very simple formula. My thought was, what is something that almost anyone can do? Took $100, my initial deposit. I could have did $5, but instead I did 100. Then I did $5 each week, pulled out of my bank account, going into my stash account. And I started that in 2018. So a year later, I found 104% growth. Year two, it was much better. I got 344% return. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the same thing, because I just pick certain stocks certain ways, and we'll talk about that strategy in a minute. But basically made a $3,000 profit, all off of putting in $800. So that initial 100 plus 780 on the weekly deposits, and so that profit came. And that was really just taking a very simple approach, not spending a lot of money out of my check. Instead, just making it to where it was simple. I was thinking, okay, what if someone just didn't have a lot of money or want to get youth involved who may not have a lot of money? What's an easy approach? And it worked. Some of the most common questions that I get are, how do I know which stock to buy? And I always just say, just listen, right? Because you can get into the technical analysis, but if you aren't there yet, then you have to just listen to the information that's out there. There's tons of information on the internet. There's the financial news channels, lots of different places to get information. And you're really just listening for the company. What's the management like? You might find that CEO left one company that was doing well, went over to another company that wasn't doing well. And then you think, hey, that person or that group of people might be able to turn that company around, right? So you see some potential there. You look at the sales, and not necessarily the sales numbers, but if you start going into a Target and you start seeing lines going out the door, you know their sales are good. And then you go over to where Kmart's used to be, and you see that the store is empty. Well, you can tell what's going on, right? You don't really need to look at hard numbers to know that. That's just simply what's at your fingertips. Look at their products and their services. So look at their shelves. Are they still selling typewriters? No one's buying typewriters or buying computers, right? So you have to look and see if they're just keeping up with the times. So these are things that you can just look at on your own without having to do a whole lot of research. You can also talk to the employees and just say, hey, how are things going with the company? What are you hearing? Because a lot of times inside information will be shared within a company. And some folks are just, glad to talk and share. So just do research, right? Until you get comfortable. How many shares should you buy? So that is definitely a you question, because it depends on how much money you have, right? And you don't want to start, using your rent and mortgage money, of course. You want to just start off somewhere where you're comfortable. So if you want to do that $5, do that $5 and put it in there. Watch how that stock does over, a good month or so. And if you see it growing, you might want to put another $5 on it. You can start as small as you want. The thing is just to get into the flow of it, know where to get information, get comfortable with it, And then you can start to, involve family members, because I always say, if you're doing something on your own, it's great. But if you can get the whole family involved, then what you're doing is you're building as a family unit and you're teaching. When my daughter used to come to me and I remember I'd be writing bills and I'd be frustrated because, the money wasn't there. And she'd say, Dad, why are you upset? What are you doing? I say, hey, go away, go play. Because what I'm doing as a parent is I'm blocking her from this stress, right? So I'm being a good parent. But I missed a teaching opportunity, right? I could have taught her and said, hey, here's what a bill is. Here's why I'm writing it. Here's how the money works. And had I showed her that as, a child in kindergarten, elementary, she'd be that much sharper today. Now, fortunately, I did, the light bulb went off, and around junior high and high school, we really started working on stuff together. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, really good book, short read, but very interesting. And I bought her Rich Dad, Poor Dad for teens. And we just start putting that together and we start making decisions. And now we're much better off for it. We can talk money. It's not stressful. We have a family plan together. Real quick, I'll share with insurance, life insurance. So I have a $1 million policy. So if I leave, my daughter gets $1 million. Well, that's the easiest way to transfer wealth. It's simple. All I had to do was fill out a form. And then, of course, I have to make that monthly payment. But I got my policy when I was a lot younger than I am now. So therefore, the policy was cheaper and that rate has remained. So if you have the opportunity to with the young folks in your lives or for yourself, get policies, that will be the nest egg to really launch some things off. Because once you lose a family member, it's already tough enough just to deal with the loss. But if you already have a family plan together, and once that money lands, the family can just start moving on that. That is one of the best things you can do for your family. So I know that's not stocks, but it's still wealth building. Last question on this slide is, when should I sell? So once you buy a stock, when should you sell? That's there's no exact science to that. But what you do is just look and see if the company, if the shares are going down, you may want to sell before they go down too quick, right? But at the same time, if you still believe in the company, you think it's strong, and you think that dip is for a legitimate reason, maybe they're putting more money into research and development because they're going to come out with some new products. If that's the case, you want to buy as it's going down, because now you're buying at a discount, because it will rebound and go back up to the price that it's at or even higher. So you have to look at that in two ways. Don't just get nervous just because a stock is going down and say, hey, this is all a scam and I shouldn't have done it. No, there's always a reason behind it. And if you look, just watch the news, right? Just pay attention. They'll usually tell you why a stock is going up and down. So don't get scared. Instead, just pay attention and be informed, because there's risk and then there's educated risk. There's a difference. If you have educated risk, you can make decisions and kind of control the destiny. Where if you just get scared with risk, you're probably going to lose out every time. Real quick, there's tons of different ways that you can be in stock and stock-like type of investing. I won't go through all these in detail, but as you can see, you have things like day trading, where you're just buying and selling constantly throughout the day, and you're watching, every penny change and kind of watching it by the minute. And some people love that. You get the thrill, the adrenaline, the rush. And some folks are like, there's no way I would stay glued to a PC just watching that kind of stuff. Just would not work for me. So if it's not for you, it's not for you, right? But then you have other opportunities here. Things like Forex, international money trading, commodities, buying metals, livestock, corn, energy, those kinds of things. There's, commodities have been around forever, but very few folks talk about it. So that's an opportunity. If you learn that, that's like a specialty now, right? So you're very valuable, and you're probably dealing with less competition because there's less people, working in that space. So anyway, you have different opportunities here. It kind of depends on, what you're interested in, what motivates you. And there's tons of information out there to learn from just on YouTube alone. YouTube University, teach you anything you want to know, right? So the question I always put at the end of our classes is, what are you going to do? What is your next step? I ask folks to make a step, make a move within 24 hours, because so many times you come to a workshop, you learn, and then all of a sudden you don't do anything. You look months back, you're like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do something with that. And you're missing opportunity. So think about what you're going to do, make that move, take that step. We have, with Neighborhood Innovation, upcoming classes. We teach all kinds of stuff. As a matter of fact, today at 1 o'clock, we have a credit building class that's going to happen. And I'll put that information in the chat if anybody wants to join. But again, all free. And we try to cover as much basis as we can in about an hour, hour and a half. We have a class that, like the slides that I just did on stocks, that'll be coming up pretty soon. And we have a schedule out on the website. This is a slide. If you want to take a picture of this, feel free to, because this one, what it does is it has referral codes. So if you want to go to Stash App, Robinhood, or Acorns, what happens is you can sign up yourself and you can get a free account, or you can get an account and start it. Or you can use one of these referral codes. If you do that, it will give you money back. So for instance, Stash, if you sign up through this referral code, it gives you $20 and it gives our nonprofit Neighborhood Innovation $20. That's partially how we self-fund ourselves to be able to continue to do more classes. So same with Robinhood, you get a free stock. Acorns, they have different kind of specials. You might get $5, but it's free money for you to be able to start your account. So instead of starting with zero, you're already starting with a profit. So it's kind of a win-win. And at the bottom, you have our website. And if you want to get on text messages to catch up with us and find out when our next workshops are coming, feel free to do that too. Last thing, I have to give this quick commercial. I don't work for the city of Sacramento, but they are giving out free laptops, y'all. And a lot of folks don't know about this. So when we talk about investing, we're talking about the digital divide. That's a piece of the conversation, right? So they're trying to decrease that divide. They're giving out free laptops, hotspots, all kinds of stuff. So go to that website there, sacramentocovidrelief.org/digital. Tons of other resources out there too, but I want to make sure folks get in on this because there's a limited supply. Neighborhood Innovation is going to be one of the hubs for the Oak Park area. So if you're in that area, we have about 125 laptops that we're going to be giving out to families. And definitely take advantage of this resource because stuff like this doesn't come around too often and it doesn't get advertised well enough, especially in our communities. That's it for me. Want to leave my contact information if anybody wants to reach out. And if anybody has questions.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was amazing. Oh my God, what game you just gave us to start the process with just $5. I mean, that's big time. And we can build on that. And these are the conversations that we need to be having. And this platform that the NAACP has allowed us to do this today is just immeasurable. And we're just so grateful and thankful. If anyone has any questions, the chat is open. Please feel free to write your questions in there. All of our contact information has been provided. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and give this back to Betty.
I'm coming. You may not see my face yet.
Yes.
I was doing double duty. So just so that you know, I forgot to tell my technicians when we put this on, I knew we were going to video it so that it would be on our YouTube channel. So Sacramento NAACP has a YouTube channel. So any of this information will be available for anyone later. But in addition to that, I normally tell them whether I wanted Facebook Live or not. And I realized that I didn't because it's a different setup through Zoom. So I call myself using my phone, putting you guys on Facebook Live until my phone got too hot and then it died out. So anyway, a lot, but with that being said, I can tell you I had an average of somewhere between 122 to 200 people that were watching you.
Wow.
Wonderful. Wow.
Good.
From my Facebook Live. And they were trying to ask questions, but they didn't realize I was shooting my laptop. But that just tells me the interest. I shared that just to tell you the interest that was available. And the next time that we do this, because there will be a next time, that we will make sure that it's Facebook Live as well. I want to thank everyone. I'm not sure, my screen has frozen, so I'm not sure if you can still hear me, but.
We can hear you, just can't see
Okay,
you.
great, great. I didn't know if there were more questions, but I like the fact that you talked about home ownership. I hate the fact of our stats, right? An unborn baby that's African.
I think we lost Betty. Did we lose you?
And in other cases, 5 figures. But it could be something as simple as having a life insurance that could change that. It could be something as simple as having a starter home that could change that. It could be something as simple of investment into the stock market with $5 that could change that. So I want to build on this conversation and make sure that our community has this information. I had no idea that close to 200 people would tune in, and I know many of them are upset with me when I kept cutting it off in order to answer other questions. So are there any questions right now in your chat? Because I can't see that right now.
There was one question.
Oh, go ahead, Keisha.
Once a person applies for the city digital plan, what is the timeline for distribution of the technology? Michael, are you aware of that?
Good question. So I know that it's a partnership with United Way, and they're working on getting the computers together because with all the distance learning going on, there's kind of a shortage. And I know that I should get hotspots this weekend, and then I imagine the rest of the hubs will as well. And then the computer should be coming in shortly after that. So realistically, once someone applies, I'd imagine within a couple weeks, they should have what they need. And then also they're able to call 211 to get any kind of technical assistance they need. So if they don't know how to turn on the computer or, do basic things like that, they can actually call 211, get a live person to walk them through and give them what they need.
Great answer. Are there other questions, Tanisha or Keisha? Because I can't see the chat piece.
I think that's the only one I saw.
Yeah, I don't see any more either.
That just says how great you guys are. You were able to give a presentation where you answered the majority of the questions of the individuals that participated through this Zoom. And so I know if I would have had it Facebook Live based on what I did, you probably would have had a lot more questions because I could see various chats. Probably the next time, I love to know what it would take, a little bit more detail of what it would take to buy your first home.
Yes.
What are those key things I need to start working on now so in 2021 I could be a homeowner?
Yes.
And businesses, that's one of the things that we didn't touch on as much in this session, how to become a business owner here. Yeah. Sacramento and in California, especially right now, there's a huge opportunity for Black-owned businesses. There's a lot of money on the table for Black-owned businesses to either expand your business or to start a business. And I don't think we have enough information about that, especially with the CARES packaging. Restaurants out there, they're giving money away for you to feed your own community. Like somewhere between $30 to $45 a meal, 3 meals a day, 5 days a week. You add that up in a month, people or restaurant owners are making a large amount of money. But do our Black community know about those programs?
Right.
That's both at the local level with the city of Sacramento and the county level. One is the Great Plates program and one is the Dine-In program. And so what I do know on the city level, we do have some African-American restaurants, but on the county level, there's not one single Black restaurant getting any of that money. And so NAACP is really looking at that and having very passionate conversations with those individuals, and we will keep you up to date. Because if you are a caterer or a restaurant owner, that's something you should know as well.
Yeah.
Betty,
Oh, yes.
we did have some more information that we weren't able to get to about housing, so that we definitely have the ammunition ready for part 2
Yep.
of this town hall, where we'll be talking about how to get into home ownership and methods for financing buy and hold properties. So we're ready.
Yes. We're ready.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Um, you just have so much information, and so we want to make sure that we have that, and maybe we need to start the new year with you guys in January, and
Yeah.
so that we can have that piece. But I also want to bring in that business piece, and Michael, definitely want to bring you back and
Well,
maybe walk us through the Robin Hood piece of it, um,
glad
and
to.
what it takes to start that, to take some of the scariness out of it, right? I
Yes.
want my Black people to succeed. I unapologetically push for my Black people all day, every day, all the time, because we're always at the bottom. It's
Yep.
time for us to take this time to create something new, and we need to help change policies
Yeah.
that that's actually decreasing our wealth ability. There's policies in there that Keisha talked about that has stopped us historically from creating the wealth that we should have.
Yeah.
And so we need to come collectively in one voice and be able to say that and make those changes. And I'm looking at just in a year or two goal that we increase business ownership, home ownership, and the ability to invest. And so I want to make sure that happens. With that, I would like to Keisha, well, we'll start with Keisha and then Michael, and then end with Tanisha closing out, having the last word.
So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on this Zoom call, and I'm looking forward to being on the next one of the part 2, because as you stated, the policies that are in place right now that were legal back then, they're still, even though we have the Fair Housing Act, the implication of those previous policies are still being felt. And so we need to create and not only develop policies. That's a government piece. There's 2 parts to this that we've got to work on. The policies that will be put in place that we can take advantage of that change all of this, strong policies that counter what's been put in place. But the second piece, which is even most important, is what we need to do for ourselves individually. We as a community, there's a responsibility that we have of ourselves, and that is financial literacy. We've got to be intentional about becoming financially literate. We can't let we can't let finances be taboo. We've got to stop being consumers and become investors, business owners, and savers. And with that, thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Michael?
Thank you. Thank you. So again, thank you for putting this together. This is just, it's so needed. What I want to encourage everyone to do is take that first step, right? If you don't take that first step, like I said, you never get to the second, the third, you never make it to your goal. And we have to actually be examples for our people. We have to be able to say, hey, I did it. Let me show you how it's done. I bought a house. I'm here. Let me show you how it's done. I bought some stock. Here's what it's doing. We have to, instead of sending our people a link and saying, hey, NAACP did this great event, go look at this link. We can't do that. We have to spoon feed our people,
That's
right?
right.
Otherwise, it's not going to happen. We have to make sure that we're accountable for each other, and we have to actually put it in each other's hand until they get started. And once they get started, then it's their responsibility to tell the next person. So we have to share. We can't keep this information for ourselves, because what happens is it works negatively against you when you do that. And here's why. When you build your assets and you become financially sound, then anytime anyone in your circle has a problem, they look at you and they want you to solve their problem because you have your money and they don't. So instead of, the crabs in the barrel kind of thing, pulling each other down, let's build each other up and let's
Yep.
share.
Amen, Michael. All right, Tanisha.
Once again, thank you to all who has tuned in. I'm very honored and proud to be the housing chair of this organization. And as you know, the NAACP, we are here to be your resource for all of your needs, investing, homeownership, whatever you need. This is where you need to come to get that information. These meetings we have on a regular basis. So just know that. And I want to set this statement out there for all of you who are thinking about making a move into buying your first home, buying your second home, building generational wealth, wanting to invest, wanting to figure out how you can get that money. It all is going to start with that mindset. You got to trigger your mind today to tell yourself, you know what, I'm ready to make a move. I need to make a move. So you need to start thinking in that direction and telling yourself that you can do it. It may be a challenge. It may take some time. Your road may not be, in 30 days, it may be a year out, but it's going to start with that mindset and then putting a plan into place. And I'm going to be here as a resource to help you put that plan into place, but it's all going to start with you making that decision to move forward. And with that being said, thank you so much, Betty and Sacramento NAACP, as always.
Thank you. We're here every second Saturday from 10 to 12 with different topics each month. Tanisha is our superwoman who last year as housing chair qualified under NAACP. I know she did more, but my interest was only in Black people. So the numbers I'm about to give you was she qualified 109, her committee did 109 people. It's a lot of individuals who qualified to purchase a home. And I believe it was somewhere between 32, 37 individuals who actually received a home. And I like to work with Black realtors. So whatever she couldn't do, we spread it the wealth, which we plan on doing here as well. But if you would like to be a participant of the NAACP, please become a member. I know my membership chair and all my executives are probably like, she has not mentioned membership. And it's $30 for a year in order to become a member. And you simply would go to our website, which is sacnacp.com, and choose the membership. And become a member. And if you would like more information about NAACP, once you become a member, we automatically add you onto our list and you will get updates on future events. Next month will be the holiday month. So we will be sending out information about our special eggnog Zoom event. And it's going to have to be after 12 o'clock because we're doing special eggnog.
Yes.
But also in the month of December, our Youth and College Division will be preparing for a 3-series Zoom event on domestic violence. It's during this COVID event or time, we're dealing with a lot of that, and a lot of the students' college homes are being inundated with an uptick of violence. And so they will be doing in December some information on domestic violence. So look forward to that information as well. And with that, we're at 12:01. Stacy, I am going to say thank you and goodbye to everyone. And we can go ahead and sign off, Stacy. Thank you so much, Ms. Anderson.